Our first panel for the day is titled How to Build Your Creative Confidence. On the panel, we have Mr. Humaid Mansoor, who is the Managing Director of Medicure Group. In addition to his role, Mr. Humaid's passion is art. He is self-taught and focuses on the abstract form. His signature style is spontaneous brushstroke with calligraphic shapes. Please welcome on stage Mr. Humaid Mansoor. Also on our panel, we have Ms. Noor Shamma, who was with us yesterday, if you were here. If you were not, I'll give you a bit of information about her. She's an entrepreneur and founder of the Postcard Initiative. She is driven by curiosity, emotion, and desire, and consciously does not classify herself as a particular type of artist so that she can express herself through many different mediums. Please welcome on stage Ms. Noor Shamma. We also have Ms. Hala Turki, who is the CEO of Cowen Education and founder and partner of Al-Ta'at Leadership Development Institute. She has a rich background in education and training with years of industry experience both regionally and internationally, and strong leadership skills and a personality which she nurtured, holding top positions serving government and private in both the government and private sector. She has an entrepreneurial spirit, and she developed that by establishing profitable startup educational institutes throughout the region. Please welcome on stage Mrs. Hala Al-Turki. Unfortunately, Mr. Omar Al-Busaidy could not be with us today, but the moderator for the panel is Mr. Aman Merchant, who is the CEO and co-founder of Impact Hub Dubai. He is a Dubai-based entrepreneur with passionate about creating better futures through the power of ideas and disruptive thinking. With an entrepreneurial journey that began in 1991, even before he entered university, he brings over 2 decades of experience to the various ventures that he is associated with. Please welcome on stage Mr. Aman Merchant. Thank you very much.
Right, Assalamu alaikum and good morning everyone. Thank you for being here on the panel. I see a very, a young audience. All of us are young, by heart, but even otherwise, everyone's young here in the audience. So I guess the topic is how to build your creative confidence. So I got a quick, test I need to do. I know you guys are probably used to doing tests as students. The first test is, which ones in the audience think you are creative? Can I just see a show of hands? Who's creative? Okay. Who feels that they're confident? And who doesn't know the answer? Okay. It's interesting. So the topic is how do you build creative confidence? We have a very illustrious panel here, and I'll get to you in a few minutes. I just want to kind of set the stage for our discussion this morning, which is that is creative confidence, is it a myth? Is it the domain of the so-called special ones? Is it something that can be learned? Or is it kind of something you're born with? And once you actually are, in possession of it, and you get to the table of creative confidence, do you kind of stay with it? Is it like something you can develop mastery in? Now, I guess I would like to change the title, so sorry I didn't tell you this last night, but I think probably a better question is not how do you build your creative confidence, but how do you reclaim what was rightfully yours? And the reason I ask this question, or reframe it this way, is that who do you think are the most creative people in the world? A question. Who do you think, okay, I guess this is a question I can ask the audiences. Who do you think are the most creative people in the world? By category. Children, kids. So all of us are born creative. You know, we do a lot of activities whether they're in nursery and in school, and then over time, because of social pressures or feedback, or I guess the need to be more practical, we end up losing that streak. And we end up being classified into the so-called creatives and non-creatives. And then again, over time, we start to accept that the latter is acceptable because it's practical. So the discussion today is to, I guess, have that conversation. How do we reclaim what is rightfully ours? On the panel today, as we were kind of introduced earlier on, I've got two artpreneurs over here, Humaid and Noor, and I've got Hala, who's also, I guess, an edupreneur in that sense. So let me, I guess, begin with the question, and we'll play a kind of a quick, easy game over here. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I want to have you respond just with one word that comes to mind. So I'll, I guess, start with, on my right side, I've got Hala. So if someone says Hala, what word comes to mind?
When you say Hala,
yeah.
Well, if you know how to speak Arabic, it means hello.
Mm-hmm. So you say Hala means hello?
Yes.
Okay. And when we say Noor, who's Noor? What word comes to mind?
Complicated.
Complicated. All right. Right. That's a post-presentation discussion then. All right. And when we say Humaid?
Oh, that's a very long discussion. I don't think it takes one word. But I've established myself in the recent past as an artist. So, I mean, that's the first thing that would come to mind.
Artist. All right.
Yeah.
So, and then when someone says creative confidence, what comes to mind again? One word. What comes to mind? Anyone? I mean, let's, I guess, go from the right to the left. Easy. It's pretty easier. Hello?
Well, creative confidence in terms of how do you stand out and be unique, you know, in the way you think or the way you approach things. So it's that uniqueness in thought and application, really.
Okay.
I think it's, is this working? Oh. I think it's more about the not worrying about what's right and wrong creatively. The freedom to express yourself without worrying how it may or may not be perceived. I think that's a very high level of creative confidence that not many have established. Because usually people want to create art or want to do things to please others, to get recognition, attention, and all that.
Okay.
But I believe people with ultimate creative confidence don't care what people think. As long as they're happy with their piece or their product, then that's all that counts.
Okay. Humaid?
I think I'll go back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of you know when you mentioned kids and how they're the most creative you know, sort of people. What I think is, you know, with the social norms that are constructed as we grow older, it becomes very difficult to sort of reconnect with what I would, you know, say I think is creative as opposed to what you think is creative. Building confidence in that is something that requires you to break away from those norms. So you know, the more that it also lends to what Huda was saying is, as long as you can be unique in that aspect and show that, you know, you are willing to push the envelope just a little bit more than what is socially accepted, I think that is what brings about the confidence that you perhaps are referring to. So
that what comes to mind when you hear creative confidence and you think of the who. So, you know, who comes to mind when someone says this person or this thing is creative confident? Who comes to mind? A person, an experience, a place? Can you kind of, from a memory perspective, you know, who comes to mind?
I think there are two ways to look at this. There's the kids where to them, they don't care if the colors match or if they're coloring in the lines or if it makes sense. They come up with the weirdest things. And then Steve Jobs is a very obvious example that comes to mind in my case, because he believed in things so much. He fought everyone. He was very creative, and he knew he was creative, and he knew what his creativity can lead to, and that was like a whole different level of creative confidence.
All right.
Also, if you consider all those people who come up with these unique ideas and creative ideas that in the beginning everyone is surprised to see, and like, what is this? Yet they hold on to that idea, and you suddenly see, the whole public and people and society following it and actually replicating it, yeah? So this is what comes to mind in terms of that creative confidence. People who know that whatever thought they bring or whatever idea they bring or whatever concept they lay out is creative, and no matter what the first impression is, whether it's surprise, rejection, whatever, they stand really strong in terms of backing up that creative idea which they came up with, or the creative thought they had, and kind of fighting that war through until suddenly, yes, everyone is following that trend. And it's a lot what we see now in the digital world, especially, we see a lot of concepts coming up and new ideas and new things, and in the beginning people are questioning, not knowing what it is, but then suddenly you see everyone on it. So I see those people as really being people that are creatively confident.
Thank you, Huda. Humaid?
Well, I mean, no one person really comes to mind, but I would agree with what Huda and Noor were saying, in that especially in today's day and age, where social media has taken over the world, right? And it's so easy to put your idea out there, whether it be new, different, whatever it is. As long as I'm sure about it, I'm going to put it out there. And I think the more you sort of push it, if it's a good idea, eventually people will come around, and then people will start following, and they will start replicating. So I think that in itself is a big component of this confidence that you talk about, because you need to be sure of yourself before you actually put it out there. So it's a process. I think it's not just again, people, yes, are very good at it, certain people, and others might not be, where then they need to build it up, I guess.
So we'll ask you about your secret formula in a short while for being that, so we'll hold you accountable to it. But as you've probably realized, or I guess I've realized, that I've failed miserably at doing one thing in the first few minutes, is how do you actually have creative people follow rules? I set a rule. I said, I'm going to ask a question, please respond with a quick response or a quick response. Everyone wanted to kind of elaborate, because like they had this energy to contribute. And this is a basic principle, right? Creative people are very difficult to contain in that sense. So again, thank you for kind of getting this tongue off to the right mode. But if creative confidence is, why bother with it? I mean, is it important? I mean, do you think it's something that we really need? Why kind of spend time on it?
I don't think, I just want to clarify, creativity is not just being artistic. Creativity is in everything you do. Mm-hmm. Theories of physics are based on creativity and imagination. And Einstein is one of the most famous creative, imaginative people, because he combined intelligence and creativity to come up with all these weird physics formulas that I cannot even comprehend. But I mean, logic gets things done, but creativity is what gets people to stand out, or to create what's not been created, or to build on logic to create intuitive or like amazing inspirational projects and products and everything that we're basically benefiting from today, because creativity has been something that's going on for like forever. It's something that everyone's been born with, and everyone tried to build on, to find ways to heat a place by, I don't know who decided to like hold two rocks and start rubbing them to like build a fire. That's very creative. I'd never think of that if I was back then. But I mean, survival makes you creative. Need makes you creative. Thirst for things makes you creative. Being trapped gets you creative. I think it depends. When everything is so easy, like nowadays, with social media and all the exposure that's happening, our brains are a bit slower somehow because we're being fed with so much. We're lagging somehow. But then before, because like everything was cleaner, everything was more focused, and then you're put in harder situations, more difficulties, and I feel like the way creativity was handled before is way different from now. Now we keep focusing on innovation and entrepreneurship and all that stuff, but creativity is in the simplest little things. Sometimes you look at your kids and they come up with the weirdest, smartest things, and you're like, how did you think of that? Or they use certain tools for other things and it works. But we don't think that way because we're at an age where it's right or wrong. There are standards and rules, and our brains are basically programmed to follow these rules.
So building on that, then I guess the question for, I'll move to Humaid for this one. Then what's the link between creativity and confidence?
Well, so I would actually, firstly, very much agree with Noor. Again, just to give you a bit of background, I used to work with one of the government companies here in the marketing department, and I had a very close relationship with the graphic designer that used to work with us, and because we used to do a lot of work together for a lot of projects, and whenever anybody would come up to her, they'd be like, "Oh, you need to be creative with this page," and that's the one thing that you can't, I mean, again, you create, like Noor was saying, creativity can come from the simplest of things. I mean, but I very much agree in that, it comes from a need for something. So whether it be a need for survival, or whether it be a need for, I don't know, it could be the most basic thing. It could be, I need to make money for my family to survive. So,
Desperation.
Exactly. You have a certain set of resources. How do you use these in the best possible manner to come up with the desired result?
Think of Castaway, the movie. Like that's the epitome of creativity.
Yeah.
Like Wilson, seriously. And he survived.
And I guess, so from what I'm hearing now, it seems to me that it's less of a skill set and more of a mindset. Or at least it begins with the mindset and then kind of goes to the skill set. So if we have to reflect on the rich experiences that you all have had, both from the art and the non-art side, the education and non-education side, for the audience out here, if you were to give them some, I guess, tips, some perspectives on how to kind of develop that creative confidence, what kind of ingredients or formula would you suggest? And maybe Hala, you can shed some light on that.
Yes, and building on what Noor and Humaid said, there was a key word that was mentioned by Noor here, that creativity for survival, yeah? So although in the past it was survival, but now we ought to think about how can we put creativity in a commercial context, so to make a living from, right? To make become an entrepreneur and pursue a job. And Humaid gave an example about being creative in his pitch. So people are putting creativity in a commercial context. And in order to put it in a commercial context, there are a number of skills that are required around it. So creativity, you can be talented, a talented creative person yourself, or you can build it up. However, it does need to be supported with a range of skills. At Kattan Education, we deliver digital education. Digital because there are more than 100 million Arab youth around the world. 25% of those are unemployed. So we wanted to really help with that matter and see how can we resolve that? How can we get youth really to go out and exploit opportunities? Where are the opportunities? And opportunities are in the creative field, in the digital field. However, to be creative in the digital field, you do need these other skills in terms of how to be innovative, how to get that creativity of you to manifest in, for example, an online program, a digital platform, an app, something like that. See, just having that creative thought or that creative talent is in it itself not enough. It needs to be supported with these skills, or even coding and programming, yeah? So if we think about, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and all the others who developed these really, you know, fascinating apps, yeah, they were creative people, but they put that creativity, that creativity manifested in the coding that they've done and the apps they've come up with. So being creative is great, but it needs to be backed up with a number of skills. And the best skills are really the digital skills now. There was a study published by Cisco in 2015, last year, that within the next 9 years, and in the MENA region alone, there is what is worth $363 billion of untapped digital potential over the 9 years. This is money just sitting there waiting for people to exploit through digital projects. So that's a great room for really putting that creativity out there, yeah, but backing it up with the digital skills.
So Hala, you completely disrupted the plans for half the audience who were planning to go and study engineering or something else, right, or medicine. Yeah. So to build on that, Noor, if you were to again give some tips to people on how to guys develop that, what would you say?
Disagree with Huda.
Yeah, this wasn't planned, right? So go ahead.
I for whoever was here yesterday and heard my speech, it was about survival of the fittest, and the fittest is the creative literate. And in order for you to be a creative literate person, you need to do creative things. And when we say creative things, we're talking, okay, the brain is divided into two parts, the right and the left hemisphere. One is used for logical thinking, which you use for math, physics, and all that. And the other side is used for the creative, emotional side. But unlike popular belief, you're not using one side of your brain when you're doing art or music or any of that. What happens when you do an art activity or like an artwork or music, play music or learn a language, you're using both parts of the brain because they start working together at the same time, which means you're using your brain at full potential, making you smarter, making you more intelligent, better critical thinking, better emotional intelligence, and so on. And that's what gets your that's what allows you to get to the next level where you can be creative because your brain is working at full power. I would advise students here and parents here to invest in your children's creative literacy. And that doesn't start with just have them do art and music classes, art classes. Unfortunately, most schools, they start cutting off, the first thing they cut off are art and music classes, replacing them with sciences and maths and extra subjects that need more attention, when basically it's a very short-sighted vision, because on the long term, the more you're exposed to art and music at a younger age, the more creative literate you are on the long term, which would allow you to, like Hala said, tap on all these untapped investments and ideas and in the digital world. But you need the basic skills in order for you to stand out. And we're in a very digital world. We're always on our phones. We're more consumers than producers, and it just makes us more lazy. Yes, we are more exposed to creativity and ideas and stuff, but we're not doing much about it because we don't sit and do things physically. It's all very digital. And I don't know if anyone heard about bullet journaling, which is a new new trend now. They're turning digital into analog. It's basically what you do on your phone with all the calendars and the tasks and stuff, but they're turning it into analog because apparently when the brain, there was a study that when the brain is sitting in, you're sitting in front of a laptop or an iPad or whatever, automatically your brain is on a more relaxed mode. It doesn't put as much effort to think and look into things, and that's why you don't memorize as hard. Sometimes when you're looking into something on the screen, you need to print it out and actually fix your notes on the paper because the brain works differently with paper. I think you need to take a break from all the technology every now and then and write things. Like, my daughter's handwriting is horrible. She's 7, and I look at her, I was like, how did the teacher tell you this was okay? And she's like, Mama, it's fine. Because even schools, they don't pay attention to handwriting. We had a creative writing class, which was graded, and I got stickers, and I used to go to the principal's office, and it was a big deal. There was cursive, and then there was italics, and then it was a big deal. Even for Arabic, nasikh was like a very important part. We used to do nasikh on and on and on, and we used to hate it back then. But I look at all the kids' handwriting nowadays, and it's appalling, because even academically, no one pays attention, because they're all the schools now are very digital and technology friendly and stuff, and it worries me. I keep pushing my daughter to write, and she hates it. And every time she writes it, I was like, if your handwriting is not nice, I'm gonna erase it and have you repeat it. So you better do it nice from the start. I was just telling my mom last time, who has bad handwriting in numbers? Like, her numbers are ugly. They're 7s and the 4s. I'm like, Mama, this doesn't look like a 4. She's like, it's fine. It looks like a 9. Because she just they're so lazy. So I don't think academically schools are paying so much attention to creativity, which starts with basic things like handwriting, to be honest. I'm not saying everyone has to have a nice handwriting. I'm just saying most students now, most kids now don't pay attention to this stuff. They don't write on the line. Some letters are all above the line, below the line. And I'm speaking from experience because I have a 7-year-old. She's in 3rd grade, and it worries me. So I think what would basically build on your creativity is going back to the most basic ways of communication and writing and drawing and sketching, and try and carry a notepad instead of having everything on your phone. It really helps.
Maybe if grade 3 are running creative writing classes, you can go back and take extra classes after hours as well. So, Humaid.
All right, so it's gonna be a bit of departure from the ladies, but I'm gonna harp on my personal experience. Again, I was working the regular job, and I kind of wanted to branch out. So then I joined my dad a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago, and that's actually funnily around the time that I started taking my art a little more seriously. So when it comes to actually sort of, again, if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about building your creative confidence and sort of putting yourself out there. The things that helped me, because I kind of just fell into it. I used to paint on my own, for friends and family, or make me a painting for my house, or make me, so I used to do that all the time. But as far as, again, professionally is concerned, I just kind of fell into it by mistake. But once it kind of happened, then I had to own it. So, when people would introduce me as an artist, given that I haven't studied art formally or in school, I used to be a little hesitant. So I think, firstly, whatever it is that you're doing, and this is, again, I'm talking about my personal experience, but whatever it is that you're doing, I think you need to first be confident in yourself. So assert yourself. And how do you do that? By, again, putting the work that's required behind it, the practice. Again, I'm not the best one out there, but where do I want to be in a certain amount of years? That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to work towards. And the other thing that's really helped me is again, putting down smart goals. So again, these are obviously things that you've heard. I come from a business background, so these are things that are harped into into my psyche. But it's really helped me with what is my passion. So what do I want to do? In the next 5 years, where do I want to be established as an artist? Do I want to be more commercially viable? Do I want to sell my paintings across the world, or is it just in Dubai? So these are things that I think are very important. And one other thing that I think people don't give enough value to is surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So if you want to be the best writer that's out there, get to know people in your community, or not even. Again, now the world is so interconnected. So reach out to people who you think are really great authors. They might be sitting in the States, or in the UK or Australia. So reach out to them, and you'd be surprised how open people are, and how receptive. Again, 90% of the people. There are people who are like, I don't want to share my secrets, but you'd be surprised how helpful people can be, because 99% of these people have been through that same struggle. So, you know, who you see out there, I mean, again, the most famous, successful people, I mean, Steve Jobs being one of them, I mean, he passed away, but, you know, he was one of those people that started from nothing. I mean, he wasn't born, you know, the CEO of Apple.
Art or
Sorry, yeah. So, I mean, it just, I think a lot of it, again, our generation, well, not so much our generation, but the newer generation, you know, I think that's something that they need to be taught, because, I mean, again, I look at my sister's kids, and, you know, the work that they put into, and when I used to go to school, you know, I know how I had to be forced to study for a certain amount of hours with their textbooks, and, you know, these days the kids are on their iPads. And their laptops, and, you know, I had to help my nephew study for exam, and I was like, I can't do this anymore, because it just didn't make sense, you know, and everything's multiple choice, and so, I mean, it's a whole different discussion, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is that hard work is very, very underrated, and you know, you need to put in the work, regardless of what it is that you want to do.
And building on what just Humaid mentioned, I think one other key strategy in terms of building your creative confidence, apart from connecting with a like-minded group of people from that area that you want to spend more time in, is find a great mentor. And the reason I say this is, you know, we work, in my business, we work a lot with entrepreneurs. And the first time they walk in with their idea, the request they often have is, I need money, I need funding for my startup, or I need funding for my new venture. By the time you finish the conversation, you realize they don't need funding. They either need a customer for that product that they're trying to sell off, or they need someone to mentor them on how to actually set their business up. So I think in that same sort of perspective, if you look at the you know, ideas that have been shared by the panel over here, it's finding someone who you can kind of get some insights from, and, you know, obviously be grateful for it, so that they feel rewarded, because they're not looking for money, you know, they're looking for having this sense of contribution and giving back. So in the closing minutes, I just want to, I guess, open the stage in case in the audience you have questions. You can probably do about 3 questions before we close the panel off. So if anyone who wants to have any insights on how to get creative or how to build confidence, you've got a great panel to ask questions. So fire away. If you can just raise your hands, your name, and then who you want to address the question to. This is also a confidence test. If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to pick on someone. So you better raise your hand. All right, wonderful, please.
I was mentioning that, you know, I like the idea about I think that should be taken forward, the handwriting for the students at school, because I also have elder kids that actually applied for university, and there are certain exams that they need to do, and one of the issues in these exams are their handwritings. The handwritings could affect the marks, because the exams are actually signed outside for IGCSE and for other. They're all outside, so it's not the teacher who's familiar with the student. So I do agree with this, and I would like you maybe to take this subject up with, you know, an initiative or something that could be taken to the
I realized, I kid you not, they don't understand that there are spaces between words. We used to put our finger to make sure every word has proper spacing. They don't realize that there are certain letters above the line and certain below the line. Sometimes capital letters go in the middle of like small letters, or like, I just look at this, and the teachers actually correct them, and she gives them like full grades. I was like, if you were my student, like, this is a 0, repeat the whole thing, because it doesn't make sense. And if they don't realize it at a young age, they're gonna grow with a habit of having a terrible handwriting and no writing skills. Because what happens when you're typing, and we grew from a different generation, you realize now when you type it wrong because you know it's gonna auto-correct it for you, which is horrible, because sometimes when you want to write it, you're like, was it a C or was it an S? And it gets embarrassing. So that's why you need to write things, because everyone does everything for you. Your phone memorizes numbers for you. We used to memorize every single number of all our friends' houses. Our parents, we didn't have mobiles, but the house phone, the grandmother's phone, I don't know whose phone. It was a different generation where our brain was always working, the muscle was always working. Now you look at kids, do you want to go out? No, I want to stay home. They're on their iPads, or they're doing these boring things like, I'm
I think
very
next year we're going to put out, because next week there is the national youth debate happening, as you know, with His Highness, and so I think we should tweet to that the next year should not be this was the year of reading, next year should be the year of handwriting.
No, for sure.
Right? But I think it's also part of the so-called Uberization of things, right? Because people want to save time. They think they can actually type an acronym with, instead of on my way and OMW, because it kind of communicates it, for example. So and again, you have to get used to the lingo. So again, thank you for that. Another question, please.
My name is Akshansh.
Okay.
Yeah. So between the talk, there was this discussion about that why someone creates, and Madam Noor perhaps said that there's a need for creation, and then comes the emotional context as well. So if we look at the history, we have a very huge history where emotional context has led to the creation of something like true art. But we also know that people like John Keats or perhaps Oscar Wilde, everybody died destitute. So then comes the context that how emotional context can merge successfully with the commercial context. Because I come from a background of literature and movie making. So we see all these great art movies going to Cannes Film Festival or Venice Film Festivals, but performing poorly at box office. So as an artist, or perhaps as an individual who is still beginning their artistic life in entrepreneurship as well, how do you overcome that? Because the history is chasing you.
So do you want us to predict your future?
No, I cannot, but that is the fear which leads to sometimes lack of creative confidence as well.
Good question. All right. Does anyone want to give some perspective on that, please? Hala?
I think that goes back to what I said earlier, which is backing it up with this other skills, really, that whereby you can commercialize that creativity you have. And I don't think really, Nouri, we're disagreeing. I think you were more like echoing what I was saying, because initially we had STEM-based education, right? STEM has changed now, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Now it has become STEAM. They have put the artistic thing inside of between the STEM. So the creativity side is very important, but you need to back it up with your right brain, right? Whether it's coding skills, whether it's business skills, whether it's, so you have a creative, so for example, Humaid, you're an artist. Have you commercialized that?
Well,
that aspect of it?
So in the process, and this is what I was saying earlier, was that, being creative is one thing. So, I can produce the paintings, I can produce the art, and it's great. But, if it's lying in my warehouse, it's of no use to me in terms of commercializing it, right? Yes, it brings me pleasure, which is great. But at the end of the day, this is what I was saying earlier, was that, you need to, again, going back to my business background, you need to figure out what it is that you want out of your art. Or, again, whatever it is that you're doing, you need to figure out within, and make these goals, write them down, keep them in, keep a small card in your wallet and say, well, by next year, this time I want to do a 1, 2, 3. Whether you're going to achieve it or not, that depends on, again, how much work you put into it, or, again, a bit of it has to do with luck, the right timing, the right place. I completely agree. But a lot of it, and I think, I throw out percentages like they're candy, but like 80-90% of it has to do with the work that you put into it. You have to keep on going. Again, I keep on saying this, but we always hear about the big names. So this artist did this, or this product developer came up with this product, but you don't know the struggle that they've been through before they actually got to that stage. So it's always easy to say that I can't do it because I don't have the background, or I don't have the resources, so it's just not me. But a lot of these people didn't have that either, and it was the work that they put into it that actually got them to the place that they are at. So
do you know when Colonel Sanders invented KFC, right? So as they say, it takes many years to become an overnight success, right? So in that sense, the 10,000 hours rule, and all these sort of cliched things about how much time you put into it and what you get out of it. All right, thank you for that. A final question, please. The mic. Thank you.
My name is Muhammad Khandaqji. I agree with Ms. Noor and...
Can you hold the mic, please, closer?
Okay. My name is Muhammad Khandaqji. I agree with Ms. Noor and Ms. Hala. They draw a full picture of creativity. Creativity started with the drawing and simple things in our childhood.
Do you mind holding the mic closer? We can't hear you very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And when we grow up, we start to put our creativity in commercial context. When creativity puts, when we put our creativity in commercial context, it's called innovation. It's not a creativity at all. So we start creative and grow build our creativity step by step with drawings and handwriting, and and will end up as innovators when we put our creativity in commercial context. So they draw full pictures, and I think.
So do you have a question or is it a comment?
No, it's a comment.
Okay, thank you.
Because اعترضت انه يعني على عكس رايك، لا هم اثنين بيكملوا بعض. بس يعني الرايين بيكملوا بعض مش اكثر. هم رسموا صوره كامله.
All right, so final words of wisdom. 30 seconds. We'll start with Humaid on the far left.
Yeah, so I just I'd go back to, you know, be sure what you're doing and stick with it. And if you're good at what you do, you will shine through at the end of the day. So yeah, I'd say I hope to be watching one of your movies sometime soon. So
I think spend more time with kids. I'm talking from personal experience. I don't like kids. Like, I personally don't like kids. If a kid is not nice, like, there is a saying that أطفال أحباب. I was like, no, even Allah doesn't like this kid. Like, I have that. But I decided to push myself and start teaching kids art on weekends for 2-hour workshops. And the age groups were from 6 to 12, so they're quite crazy. But I fell in love with it because they look at things differently. They pushed my tolerance in a good, positive way. And I learned from them more than they learned from me in a way. Because the way they look at things, like, I had a self-portrait class and one of my kids was like, can I go in front of the mirror? And I was like, okay. And he just stands in front of the mirror and starts drawing himself. I'm like, I thought kids were just gonna draw themselves, like, with blonde hair when their hair is black, which some kids did. Some added a fringe, some changed their shapes, some added like more limbs, and it's amazing. And you ask them, always ask them, why did you do this? What does this mean? What do you think of this? You'd be amazed at how creative they are. Like, I asked my daughter, like, I used to, kids have this term now called fashion trashing, where my daughter was wearing different things where nothing matched, and I was like, what is this? You're not going out like this. She's like, Mama, it's called fashion trashing. This was a year ago. She was 6, and I felt so stupid. But then I'm like, okay, and I let her go out like this because so what? Like, they don't always have to look so perfect. She looked perfect and cute and silly, and I had a story to tell every parent when I was like, she's fashion trashing you guys. So let them be, like, spend time with them and try to find the kid within, the child within. It helps you be more creative, I promise.
My advice is build your creativity. Take all these suggestions, build the creativity, gain that confidence, and then back these up with digital skills. Because no matter what subject or major you've taken, whether it's accounting or medical or engineering, now most universities around the world, they have digital skills included. Because for every field now, there is so much innovation happening in these different fields, and this is the future, really, and this is where the opportunity is. So do develop your skills in that area, and see how you can commercialize that creativity for the benefit of society and economies.
I'll end with, I guess, thank you for your comments. With something on a more philosophical note. So I teach leadership on a side note to children from the ages of 6 to 13, because, you know, children, or we don't get to teach leadership or learn leadership until you're 25 and you become a manager, so to say. So I guess the 3 things that I'd like you to leave you with is, one is to always be grateful, because when you're always grateful, you can never have negative emotion or energy. Protect your confidence, that's the biggest asset you will have. And last but not least, something that was touched upon by all of us today is be present. So when you're there, be there. Because I'm sure that when you're here, you may be having 10 other things or a million other things in your head, but if you want to really benefit from the moment you're in, you know, be there and being present. So I think there's that skill of being present. I mean, I've got activities I do with my team to be present, and just having this moment of silence is very challenging and disturbing, because they're like, why can't I check my mail or my messages? Or I'm like, no, just look into each other's eyes and do nothing. That's really painful. So again, be present. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here, to the organizers and to the panel for, I guess, going along with my questions. And thank you.